My name is Sean Tyka, and this is my city, Buffalo, New York. I am a student at City Honors School, and I have tasked myself to create a documentary about the opioid epidemic for my MYP Personal Project. My concern for my community has driven me to take up this topic. I've had countless people ask me if I'm interviewing addicts, an action both dangerous and totally unbeneficial, and it is exactly these people that I wish to inform about the danger of opioids and their effects on a community. Moreover, I am trying to determine why the epidemic has been so overlooked until recently. The opioid epidemic has grown into a massive conflict nationwide. It is simply put the explosion of the abuse of prescription painkillers due to opioid dependence. Opioids include drugs such as oxycodone, codeine, fentanyl, and methadone, which are prescribed for pain and are linked to heroin chemically. The epidemic is part of a larger problem throughout the U.S., as currently drug overdose deaths are the leading cause of injury death in the nation. Chemically, opioids work as a double-headed dragon, stimulating the pleasure-causing center of the brain and blocking pain transmission. Opioids cling to opioid receptors, which are found mainly in the nervous system, the stomach, and the intestines. They are commonly used to treat pain of the peripheral nervous system, the nervous system located outside of the brain and spinal cord, as well as in the gastrointestinal tract. Physical dependence is reached when the human body naturally adapts to the presence of a substance, such as opioid painkillers, and is similar to the concept of tolerance. Without the substance the body is dependent on, it goes through withdrawal. Withdrawal may involve many symptoms, including sweating, nausea, vomiting, and even extreme dysphoria. After withdrawal, depression and insomnia can last for months. Locally, the epidemic has expanded, as shown by more and more stories about family friends or neighbors using and abusing prescription painkillers. In New York State, opioid-related deaths happen more commonly than in any other state in the U.S., with 10% of the United States epidemic-related deaths occurring in the Empire State. Buffalo's County, Erie County, is tied with Staten Island for the second highest epidemic-related drug rate. A likely reason for these startling statistics is the high amount of access to treatment in the state, cited by New York State Comptroller Thomas P. DiNapoli. Factors in these trends may include New York's higher than average rate of health insurance coverage and the state's long-standing efforts to promote access to treatment, said DiNapoli. Heroin use can also be tied to the epidemic, as legal opioids can be gateway drugs to the illegal heroin. It has been estimated that 85% of opioid addiction begins with a legal prescription of opioid painkillers. Deaths resulting from heroin use are more common in New York State than in any other, much like deaths resulting from opioid abuse. I feel these numbers demand attention from the people of the state of New York. I am worried for my community, which is being affected by this problem with no clear solution. I ran a survey to see how aware my community is of the opioid epidemic. I used email, Twitter, and Facebook to gauge information concerning the topic. I will share some of the most interesting results. Out of the 81 people that took my survey, all 81 had heard of the opioid painkiller oxycodone. Also, about 93% of the people polled had heard of codeine and fentanyl. I concluded that obviously those surveyed were aware of those opioids. More telling, 34%, over one-third of those surveyed, have been personally affected by the opioid epidemic. Clearly, awareness extended above having heard of common prescription drugs. According to my survey, 56 out of 81, or 70% of people, had seen news relating to prescription opioids on television or in the newspaper in the last week. Only 2 of the people who took my survey said they have never seen news relating to prescription opioids. Fortunately, the opioid epidemic has been noticed by many more people than ever before as of late. Additionally, 71% of people believe healthcare professionals play a larger role in the opioid epidemic than other drug epidemics, and 83% think there should be more action by legislature concerning opioid control. Work must be done to control the plethora of illegal abuse of legal drugs locally and nationally. The opioid epidemic is very different from other drug epidemics, however. Unlike other deadly drugs like heroin and cocaine, opioids are legal with a prescription. For some people, these painkillers are essential for dealing with pain. Often, a user and an abuser of opioids cannot be distinguished from each other. This is a huge problem for healthcare professionals and politicians alike. For the former, they may be forced to make their decision to treat or not to treat a person in strenuous pain. On the flip side, they either provide or do not provide fire to the flames for addicts. How are these healthcare professionals expected to discern the difference between a still injured patient or a hooked addict? Fortunately, there is an improved technology that can help doctors research the patient and tell if they have, for example, visited other hospitals or clinics. The choice is still difficult, and even if the healthcare professional makes the correct discernment, the patient could turn to obtaining opioids illegally or even using heroin. Politicians must decide how to limit illegal sales of opioids, an insanely impossible task to complete if the politician wants to continue the important treatment provided through opioid painkillers. So, the epidemic is a clearly unsolvable problem, especially without awareness. It is obvious that help at the community and even individual level is essential to controlling the epidemic, as well as support from politicians and advice from healthcare professionals. Most importantly, addiction is a disease and addicts are people. Like any disease, there are cures. A system has been created for doctors to view a patient's prescription history and use that information to make a decision on treatment. Guidelines have been constructed for doctors to follow, so opioids are only administered in situations where reward outweighs risk. And as always, there are helpful rehabilitation centers for people who have already become dependent on opioids and people willing to help the people in their community. In conclusion, the epidemic has not been overlooked, and there are people on the sidelines working to exterminate this disease. All that is needed is communication within communities.